Hello world, and welcome back to Architectural History 2. This video will cover Chapter 16 and the years 1850 through 1890. During the boom periods of industrial development, the cities of Europe and America grew beyond recognition. As cities grew higher and wider, they required comprehensive planning and social services. The industrial metropolis grew too large to cross on foot, inspiring new forms of transportation, such as omnibuses and streetcars. Here, the modern practice of urbanism, a mixture of technical, social, and aesthetic ideas for the design of large cities, took hold on a comprehensive scale. This image depicts the Buttes-Chaumont Park, built over a dump site, Jean-Charles Adolphe Alphand, 1860s, in Paris. The 150-kilometer network of new Parisian boulevards remained Haussmann's most conspicuous achievement. He gave the streets coherent facades and a uniform square section of roughly 18 meters or 58 feet from building to building. This map, showing a detail of George Eugene Haussmann's interventions, 1850 through 1860, the gray areas represent the new blocks built over the demolished medieval fabric, which was replaced by the 22-meter, 70-foot wide Boulevard Saint-Michel and its new apartment building shown in white. Aside from their hygienic and military objectives, both Napoleon III and Haussmann aspired to architectural greatness. This image, Napoleon III's additions to the Louvre, Hector Martin Lafleur, 1855. In this image in Paris, the facade of 1859, the Opera Charles Garnier, 1875. Rather than expropriate properties to build new streets through the city, the Austrian planners exploited the state-owned space of the 18th century fortifications, using its glacis to create a grand 800-meter, 2,560-foot wide girdle around the historic city. Vienna, Ringstrasse, ground map showing the new streets begun 1858. Construction began in the rest of the Ringstrasse's 24 institutional structures in the 1870s. This image in Vienna, the new city hall, Friedrich von Schmidt, circa 1880. This image is also in Vienna of the Parliament, Theophilus Hansen, circa 1880. An image of the Burg Theater, Gottfried Semper, circa 1870. While the modernity of the Ringstrasse satisfied Vienna's bourgeois, it troubled the urban planner Camille Sitt, who found it lacking in human scale and urban beauty. He designed alternative solutions, framing the voids around the Votkirche and the Parliament. In this image, proposal to enclose the spaces of the Ringstrasse, Camille Sitt, 1890s, showing buildings proposed by Sitt to help redimension the public spaces. In Spain and Italy, urbanism became a major consideration. In Florence, poor residents and few anarchists were displaced to rebuild the Mercato Vecchio district. This image depicted again in Florence, the demolition of the Mercato Vecchio Historic Center, 1890s, Triumphal Arch at Piazza della Repubblica. This graphic or drawing of the island of Manhattan in New York City, commissioners planned a uniform grid from 14th Street north in the year 1811. The Central Park area was moved and enlarged in the 1850s. New York Park, the Park's Gothic Bridge. By the end of the 19th century, the island of Manhattan became the densest city in the world. It spread out on the 1811 Commissioner's Plan, the uniform grid of oblong blocks. The only relief in Manhattan's relentless grid came in the creation of Central Park. The Union victory of 1865 stimulated the production of the northern metropolises. Manhattan filled out as its transportation systems improved. New York's class of middle-class commuters initially spread across the East River to the neighboring city of Brooklyn. The Great Fire in Chicago of 1871 consumed a third of the city's mostly wooden structures. Thus, new tall buildings were designed as solid, fireproof volumes with scant reference to European styles of decoration. Chicago's sparsely decorated box-like structures overtook those of New York as the tallest in the world. This image, the top image, is Grand Central Terminal by Warren and Wetmore, 1904, and an interior of that same terminal station of 1904. Burnham and Root designed the 15-story Reliance building with a steel frame in Chicago as a response to the Chicago fire in 1893. America started calling tall buildings skyscrapers. In 1903, Burnham and Root's office produced a 23-story Fuller building known as the Flatiron Building because of its wedge shape. New York, Fuller, Flatiron Building, Daniel Burnham, 1903. You may recognize this from Times Square. The greatest of the campanile-like towers, Cass Gilbert's Woolworth Building of 1913, remained the world's tallest office building for nearly 2 decades. In New York, by Cass Gilbert. Lifestyles in house form, apartments, row houses, bungalows, and utopias. The apartment type, a 5 to 6-story structure with several family dwellings on each floor, appeared in Europe during the 18th century, first as units within a subdivided palace, and then as vertically stacked alternative to row houses. However, the Anglo-American middle class dreamed of either living in a wider row house or, better yet, owning a detached dwelling or bungalow. This image depicting a tenement from Jacob Riis, How the Other Half Lives, 1894, in New York. This graphic depicts analysis of the apartments of the Parisian streets in 1810 and in 1910, Eugene Hernand, 1903. Parisian apartment buildings frequently consumed an entire city block, offering a new scale of urban composition. In Vienna, the new apartments in the Ringstrasse district followed similar criteria. This image in Vienna, a typical Mietpalast, 1870s. The mass of poor folk in industrial cities around the world lived in crowded tenements, multiple-story walk-up flats. In the 19th century, in New York, over 2/3 of the population was packed into 80,000 buildings. New York, former tenements in Lower Manhattan with fire escapes, late 19th century. London, Belgrave Square, Thomas Cubitt, 1840s. The row or terrace house emerged in English-speaking countries as parts of Northern Europe as the alternative to vertically stacked apartments. In mid-19th century, the London contractor Thomas Cubitt, 1788 to 1855, built the most important row houses like Belgravia, depicted here. Bedford Park, designed in London in the 1870s by Scottish-born architect Richard Norman Shaw, circa 1830 through 1912, did not have a park of its own, but attracted its clientele through a unique, romantic style that conveyed the idea of comfort. Stanford White took charge of the William Watts Sherman House of Newport, Rhode Island. He composed it asymmetrically like the works of Richard Norman Shaw. McKim and White designed dozens of patrician villas in the shingle style. Newport, Rhode Island, Watts Sherman House, Henry Robinson Richardson Firm, 1874. The Beaux-Arts, eclecticism and professionalism. Almost every major public building in the 19th century France showed the influence of the École des Beaux-Arts. By the end of the 19th century, as the Beaux-Arts style began losing support in Europe, it gained significant momentum in the United States during the boom period of the American Renaissance. The École des Beaux-Arts, second phase, Félix Douban, 1867. The eclecticism was the combination of the best aspects of different styles into contemporary style. The facade emulated Roman Renaissance style, its base with Cancellaria's ashlar rustication, the upper story with bays borrowed from the Belvedere Court of the Vatican. The eclecticism of Beaux-Arts graduates led to creative combinations rather than classical rigor. In this image of Lille, France, Palais des Beaux-Arts, Edouard Berard, 1885. The Church of Sacre Coeur, soaring above the hill of Montmartre in Paris, offered a coherent yet shocking vision. While consistent with the Greek cross plan of St. Front, the architect's domes were pure invention with no basis in historical fact. Beaux-Arts eclecticism spread beyond France. Perhaps the best known and certainly the most exuberant expression came in the monument in Rome known as Vittoriano, but also called by many nicknames such as the wedding cake and the typewriter. By Giuseppe Sacconi, 1882 through 1932. Ludwig II of Bavaria, grandson of patron of Munich's historicist monuments, became one of the most enthusiastic sponsors of eclecticism. Ludwig II desired to live in the world of Wagnerian illusions, or Wagnerian, I guess you would say, programming a series of permanent stage sets. This image is in Linderhof, Bavaria, Peacock Pavilion, George Dolman, 1870s. Ludwig's most ambitious castle, Neuschwanstein, loomed above the ancient family castle of Hohenschauer, where he had spent much of his childhood. Bavaria, Neuschwanstein, Dolman, 1870s. Some of you may know this already, but Neuschwanstein was an inspirational building for Walt Disney, and I believe Cinderella's castle is modeled after it. Richard Morris Hunt, 1827 through 1895, the first American trained at the Beaux-Arts in the 1840s, created several Fifth Avenue mansions, the marble-clad Renaissance Palace of the Breakers in Newport, and grandest of all, the Biltmore in Asheville, North Carolina. This image by Richard Morris Hunt, 1880s. This image depicting the Statue of Liberty by Frederic Auguste Bartholdi and Maurice Koechlin, based by Hunt in 1886. Henry Hobson Richardson, 1838 through 1886, improved on attempts to transform medieval European motifs into uniquely American style. Trinity Church depicted here, exhibited a colorful patching together of beloved Romanesque elements, the central tower cribbed from the Cathedral of Salamanca, and the front porch of the Saint-Gilles du Gard. Richardson's studio employed all three partners, McKim, Mead, and White, the major Beaux-Arts practice in late 19th century America. The library offered, Boston Public Library that is, offered a new level of grandeur to American public buildings and features such as bifurcated marble-lined stairway. Chicago, the White City, as realized for the 1893 Columbian Exposition, master plan by Daniel Burnham, 1893. Daniel Burnham's coordination of landscape, infrastructure, and facades at the 1893 Chicago Fair inspired the City Beautiful movement among citizens groups and planners, leading to such grand renewal efforts as the 1907 Civic Center for San Francisco. This City Hall, Arthur Brown, 1907.